Well, blessed Wednesday to you as we come with your daily encouragement. And we are in the midst of the book of Revelation. And we're in Revelation chapter 8. And we're talking about the trumpets. And we've been talking about the seals before. And one of the things I want us to notice is the visual images that come here. Now, I think there's a relationship between the seals and the trumpets, and eventually will be the bowls of wrath. They probably are three different things, or they can be three aspects of the things that get progressively worse for the world that they describe. In the seals, it usually works with four horsemen that come with four seals, and they take care of a fourth of the earth. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is that these trumpets will burn off a third of the earth. A third of the water will be blood, a third of this, a third of that. There's a progression that's happening with each of these visions. So, in some ways, they're the same, there's some parallels, and in other ways, there's a progression that happens. The other thing we should notice is the symbolism here. It is the same symbolism, at least in the four trumpets, as in the four seals, as in the four horsemen, that are similar to what happened in Egypt with the Nile and all the other things turned to blood. These are examples, once again, of God's judgment. Now, how they're going to be fulfilled, once again, is everyone's prerogative depending on their point of view. And what timeline they're going to be put together is everyone's prerogative. But the warning I give to you with this, while we may think we got this figured out, we need to be open to mystery. We need to be open to the possibility that we don't know everything there is. And that's where we get into conflict in the book of Revelation, is because we don't appreciate it for its vision, and then we try to interpret things way too much as far as fitting a timeline. So let's look at it from just the scripture, just what it says here today. Now, remind you that we had a first trumpet yesterday. The first angel, it says in chapter 8, verse 6. Now, there are seven angels who had seven trumpets made ready to blow them. And remember, they came out of the seven seals. And when the seven seals happened, these seven trumpets popped out. The first angel blew his trumpet, and there came great hail and fire mixed with blood, and there was hurled on the earth, and a third of the earth was burned up. Remember, the seals had a fourth of the world. Now we're moving up to a third of the world. And the burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. We talked about that yesterday. Now let's look at the second trumpet. The second angel blew his trumpet, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea. And once again, a third of the earth, a third of the sea became blood, a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. Now we have a progression from first we had the sea and the creatures, very similar to what Moses pronounced on Egypt, but then we also have a third of the ships. And it's not just concentrated on the land of Egypt, it's concentrated on the world. And so the expansiveness of this is to illustrate that God is in charge of the world. We are not. And dare I say, God is in charge of the interpretation. And so the second seal that we saw in chapter 6 of Revelation was the horse of war that brought an end to peace. And what comes after that is a horse of blood and destruction that doesn't bring peace. Water is what we usually would say was sustenance. And at the end of time, we see that the waters will be placid and will be at peace. But it is not living water anymore. It's not placid water. It is water that is full of blood and destruction. Now, why is this happening? All of us might ask that question. Because of sin, because of the alienation of God, and also because of God's justice. God desires justice. And so the trumpet is a symbol of that. Now remember, the first four seals kind of came as a group. And so the first four trumpets also come as a group, progressing from a fourth to a third. And then it says in verse 10, a third trumpet, an angel blew his trumpet, and a great star fell from the heaven, blazing like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers, and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. And the third of the waters became wormwood, and many died from the waters that had become and made bitter. Now, how does this relate to the waters that became blood? We don't really have a correlation between them. All it is saying is that it was a supernatural power. Now, if you are reading of the famous book the by C.S. Lewis, where he takes the perspective of the devil, and he talks about his associate, his name, Wormwood. He's the one that brings, how should I say, temptation and judgment in the Screw Tape Letters, one of C.S. Lewis's most famous interpretations of this. But when we go back to what wormwood was, it was something that if you saw in the water, you would look and say, I can't drink that. It would be a wood, a rotten wood, and you would see the maggots and worms and everything in it. And so it was a sign. Is this going to be good water for me to even wash with? Absolutely not. Is it going to be useful water to me? Absolutely not. And it says that all of the things that brought a canopy of life are now being destroyed. And it is because of God's justice. Because the cry from the people underneath the temple that started this whole segment was, how long, O Lord? And so the judgment of God first starts with the fourth, and now it is going down to a third. So there is a progression here that is happening. And a fourth trumpet blew his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck down, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, and a third of their light was darkened, and a third of the day was kept from shining, and likewise the night. Now, in creation, if we go to Genesis, we know that the stars were there to mark times and seasons. We know this from our calendars. We know that in our neck of the woods and all over the world, the days are getting shorter. And they will get shorter until the time of Christmas, and they'll get longer again until the longest day that comes in June. And so we have an order to season, but with this interruption, all the calendars, all the things that brought us life, first a fourth of them, and now a third of them. In other words, marking God's timing in these. And so each seal, each trumpet is remarking that the things that God maybe set in motion are now being unwound. All the things that we have gotten used to are being unwound. And so it is a reminder of who is in control. Now, for many of us, we would say, why do we need this book? Well, because we see a world in chaos. We see wars and rumors of wars. We see incompetency in a lot of leaders. No matter what party you belong to, what perspective, we see a lot of debate among leaders. And what we are reminded at this is that at the heart of this winding down is a God who has created this world, and we have to anticipate is going to recreate it once again. So while there is trouble and desolation here, we also had to have a confidence in hope. Just as Jesus died on the cross in a very ignoble suffering, was buried, he too is resurrection. And so it is with this world, and so it is with our life. God bless you today. We trust that these continue to be words of encouragement. Take care. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow.